We're live! FU Friday. Welcome to Go FUD Yourself. JD Gagnon, my good friend Kiara, back in the saddle today. Different location. I like your new house. It's pretty exciting. What's up? How you doing?
Great. Obviously in this beautiful mansion now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I think you're a little bit frozen. Might have to fight with your internet again. But it's FU Friday. So while you're figuring that out,
refresh.
Yeah, maybe give her a refresh. I'll get everybody rolling. It's FU Friday. So we have a lot of stuff to look back on from the week, a lot of FUD to dispel. And so we'll just get right into it, I think. There's a whole bunch of nonsense. Well, there's a whole bunch of stuff that has come out of the SEC this week, which I think has given us a lot of things to be fuddy about and things to discuss and debate on the call. But honestly, again, I have to come back with the same sentiment that FU SEC and regulators at the moment. I mean, there's an opportunity here to do something so much greater than what we're currently doing. Ho, she's back.
Oh my God. And maybe it'll work now.
Maybe. There's a little delay between video and audio, but that's okay. People get it. No one cares. You know, we're not tech experts from video streaming. So it's all good. We're just using what we got.
I've been plugged into Ethernet. I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's all good. It's all good. So anyways.
What were you telling them? Were you bad-mouthing me already?
Yeah, I was talking shit about you. Actually, I was talking shit about the SEC. But what I was saying is, it's, you know, my sentiment is FU SEC at the moment. Not because I think the SEC doesn't potentially have a role to play here. I just we have such an opportunity in America right now to harness the momentum that's in front of us, and it's happening anyways. Like, blockchain and crypto is not going anywhere, regardless whether the U.S. bans it entirely or whatever. It's still going to expand. It's still going to scale globally, and we have an opportunity, a very small window, which is closing quickly. We talk a lot about the arms race and all that, but we have an opportunity for the SEC and other regulators to, you know, get their shit together, for policymakers and lawmakers to get their shit together and start seriously thinking about how to build structure into our regulatory framework for crypto so that the rest of us can function in a compliant manner knowingly. Right now,
as opposed to just attacking everyone constantly.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, again, I've been saying this for years, and it still rings true in my opinion today. The securities laws as they stand now are very difficult to, like, just immediately place on top of crypto, because it is different. There's different requirements. There's different considerations. It's not the same. It is a different technology. It's a different structure. There's a lot of nuance in how things can be composable and how they happen and how that would impact securities regulation and so on. And so something needs to be done. But this whole, like, you know, regulation via enforcement is a very strange approach to things. And it's, I mean, I get it. The pressure for regulators at the moment is, like, at its absolute max. They're all becoming diamonds because of the pressure. And I get it. You know, like, we can acknowledge that.
You can also become coal. Not everyone becomes a diamond.
They have an opportunity to become a diamond. But yeah, like, I mean, the pressure, obviously, in the wake of, like, a lot of this stuff that, you know, to many is a symptom of the fact that we haven't engaged this meaningfully with meaningful intent in the last 5 years as things were really starting to kind of explode. I mean, it was a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and effectively it was just a hot potato. Everybody was like, I don't know how to deal with it. Let's worry about transing the kids instead, or some nonsense. Mm-hmm. Which seems like the priorities of our federal government in the US, I think, are.
Well, we talked about this a little bit too in some of the other countries where we talk about the crypto arms race. Is like, yes, we're seeing something happening with the EU and crypto, but probably they have other priorities like the riots in the streets of Paris, right? Whereas in America and Canada, it seems like we're just kind of making problems up to distract ourselves from the crypto regulation. So where many other countries have human rights offenses and what have you going on, we're we're just kind of having champagne problems that are distracting us from being an innovative space. Right?
Yeah, and I mean, we have a lot of other things that, like, for some reason, mainstream media like just isn't talking about. Like the banking crisis, it like is a crisis. Like if you actually pay attention and look close enough, like this is a massive problem. And effectively, what the Fed has done, and we talked about this, Lucas and I talked about this. Shout out to Moonwell, our friends at Moonwell. Lucas was our guest yesterday, of course.
Thanks,
when you weren't here, thanks, Lucas. Love you a long time. We'll definitely have him back again. He said he spent like 2.5 hours reading all the articles and, you know, really preparing, making sure he went to bed early, he was ready. I was like, ooh, somebody took this serious. I think we're getting fancy.
I like it.
But anyways, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, but I mean, the Fed is approaching this in a very odd way by effectively backstopping the bank's deposits, but not necessarily shareholders and other creditors, but the deposits, yes. And what they think that's going to happen is create a credit crunch, which in effect will be the same as rate hikes on inflation. So they think. The problem is the collateral damage from that is extraordinary. Like the collateral damage is now a point can be made that a lot of value has flowed from depositors and smaller participants in the economy up to these shareholders and enterprises that own these banks and own these companies. And this is just kind of a bit of a reversal of the pendulum where some of that capital is flowing back to the small guy and some of it's getting wiped out for the big guy. Fair, but that's not normal. It's not normal market forces that are leading to this. It's the Fed moving stuff around on the chessboard and making this stuff come to light. I don't love it. I have to agree with Balaji here. I'm not sure about the $1 million bet or any of this. He was on Pomp's podcast or Pomp's show the other day. It's an hour long. Search Pomp on YouTube. You can find it with Balaji. But he really goes through in detail kind of his rationale for why he thinks we're going to run into a situation of some serious adoption of Bitcoin. Because it really is the only truly and fully decentralized asset class that exists currently, and that is under zero control or purview of any global authority, period. It just is what it is, and it'll continue. Anyways, and so meanwhile, we've got this crazy crisis that's going on, but now the tin hats are coming out, which is kind of interesting. They're starting to say, okay, a CBDC is coming out in the US, and there's a lot of speculation around that in July. So CBDC is coming out in the US. I mean, if the CBDC becomes the default asset in the United States, it's as easy as a click of a button to cut off access to all other crypto. They can censor your accounts. Oh, we don't like you, so we're not going to allow any payments to go to your account. Or we think you might owe us some taxes or something, so we're just going to freeze all of your accounts. Like this Big Brother CBDC stuff is exactly the opposite of what needs to happen. So you see guys like DeSantis and Ted Cruz and others in the US that are trying to, put legislation forward, or at least encourage legislation to prevent some of the CBDC activity in their state, at least, because the states do still have some power in that regard. But anyways, to make a long story short, all these banks, the fiat on and off ramps, all of a sudden are becoming few and far between relative to what they were recently, and now we're running into like they're litigating and sending Wells notices and suing all these people in every direction. But we have, again, and I keep saying this, and it's a drum I'm going to keep banging on, we have no fucking example or path that people can follow to do it correctly. Like,
well, this is actually the funniest thing, right? Is what the SEC is doing by having all these lawsuits and making them so public and going after celebrities every year. People love their celebrities, right? I feel like the National Enquirer, I'm talking about Chappella, and then I talk about Lindsay Lohan, and then last year Jimmy Fallon and a few others got hit for the apes. No. And like every time we're having these lawsuits, every time they hit our mainstream media, all we're doing is creating the fear and uncertainty and doubt surrounding crypto, surrounding blockchain, which means that we will be laggards in the technological adoption. of this emerging technology that is worldwide going to be governed, and then North America will end up being laggards. We will not be setting the standards, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to be the tech hub if we continue down this path.
I mean, it's pretty normal that America does move relatively slow. The bureaucracy is built in some ways for that, and in some instances it's good that they can't make sweeping change too quickly because
absolutely, but I don't even mean the bureaucracy. I just mean the publicity and some people want to call this chokepoint 2.0 and some people really don't want to call it that.
Well, I mean, the thing is the largest existential crisis for the United States, or for the Fed, is that the Fed no longer has unilateral control over monetary policy, and that would totally change the dynamic of how governments are run. If they can't just print money at will, it will absolutely change the way that government is run. And
they're not going to be in charge of the rate hikes and the inflations. And
well, there's still other ways to impact that, but not as direct as the Fed's activities currently. And the funny part is the Fed is supposed to be arm's length from the federal government, but a lot of the comments that they make, a lot of the, it sounds like they're just towing the Democratic Party line at the moment, which is fine. I mean, everybody's going to have a natural leaning one way or the other, but this institution is also, the Fed is also supposed to be a private institution that oversees or at least manages monetary policy and the major banks and the overnight rates and all of this stuff, keeping them all solvent. But it's also operated by the big banks and funded by the big banks. So like, it's kind of like, hey, trust me to police myself. Yeah. But like that for most people, that's fine. But there's obviously exceptions to that rule. And it kind of seems like that's where many federal governments have gone. And the people in power, of course, they don't want to lose that control over the economy, because then all of a sudden you don't have unilateral decision-making authority over how business operates, and market forces become a lot more prevalent. And so anyways, it feels like there's a lot of weird distraction going on. Like I said, the tin hats are kind of coming out. I don't see it, I don't think yet, at least, as a huge conspiracy that they're trying to snuff out crypto entirely. I just think they're fearful of what crypto may mean and just not sure how to deal with it. And so instead, let's just try to beat the gopher back into the hole for a few years, and then eventually.
It's such a weird way to do it. Like in my mind, we would set some regulations that could be draft or experimental. We could ask groups to give feedback. We could ask them to comply by a certain date, and then that would also provide actual grounds for you to sue them, as opposed to taking all of these cases to a judge and having them make that decision. Actually, one of the articles that we referenced today, I love this article. It's on bitcoin.com. It reads as though I wrote it, which is why I love it so much. It's called SEC in a Pickle. And all of the titles in the article are alliterative. And I highly recommend this article just for my own amusement, not specifically for the news, because it's the same news as everywhere else. But something great about this article is that it's not FUD at all. It's actually the opposite. So it talks about Ripple. It talks about Tron. And it talks about Coinbase and how these are huge players with a lot of money, and they're not going to back down in these lawsuits. Right. And this particular article is saying that they will set precedent, and because of the massive budgets, and because people will want to see them set a good precedent, they'll probably end up getting additional backing for those budgets. And the SEC might lose. And then if the SEC loses, we have a better precedent within crypto, but probably a little bit ad hoc and probably not very holistic, if that makes sense.
It's still going to be quite situationally specific, quite large institution, centralized institution focused.
Absolutely.
Mean, we can say what we want about XRP and Tron, but they, at the time, were quite centralized when a lot of the allegations are coming in. I mean, whether Tron is decentralized or not, Justin Sun has a hell of a lot of unilateral control over much of Tron's assets and TUSD and all these other things.
Actually, yeah, can we break some of these stories down a little bit?
Yeah. So that was my transition.
Cool.
I was moving nicely to the.
I can't read your segues yet. We're gonna have to have a segue alert or something.
I'm not very good at them, to be honest. But whatever. So I mean, we can talk about Tron and Justin Sun and stuff. But I mean, to anybody that's been paying attention, I mean, he's been pretty nonchalant, throwing money around. He's being charged for market manipulation and what was the other one? Market manipulation and that he was offering securities that were unregistered. Anyways, like to anybody that's been paying attention, I mean, that kind of makes sense. Like the guy, bought a whole bunch of Aave to make an Aave proposal and get his asset onto Aave, and like he's just done so many things that kind of defy decentralization, which is the claim, and defy that there's a central authority, that their actions are the ones leading to the value of the assets, which makes it also a security if people are buying it expecting that these people are going to do such things in order to create value. And so anyways, Justin,
okay.
He's been great for the
for
space.
People who are paying attention. What about for people who aren't paying attention? Let's say I'm crypto curious and I want to know what all of these lawsuits are about. We've got Coinbase has had some documents subpoenaed by the SEC, but we don't know what the allegations are yet.
Yeah, there's the majority of the speculation with Coinbase is that it has to do with their off-chain staking platform. So they had a centralized version of staking, which the allegations, at least the speculation is the allegations are that was a security because it wasn't in fact going on chain, and they were holding custody of the assets, and then the user was depositing into Coinbase expecting profit based on the work of Coinbase, and all this shit. So as a result, Coinbase has taken many of their staking platforms and moved them on chain, obviously. But there's more to it. I mean, Coinbase has been, and this is actually kind of makes my point from earlier. Coinbase is a prime example of this. So Coinbase has gone in and said to the SEC and regulators many, many times. Brian Armstrong has been a huge proponent of pushing regulation forward. They've got a huge policy team with some of the best, policy people in the world working for Coinbase. And their whole goal has been, hey, like, let's try to work with regulators and figure this out. But what happens is they have these conversations and then they turn around and the regulators just sue them because of stuff that they learned in these conversations. And so it really doesn't feel like a good faith engagement. And it's one thing for those guys because they know that at some point it's going to come to a head and they're probably going to have to invest in litigating, at least in the short term, if policy isn't updated. But for everybody else, like, what does that say to other platforms, other protocols that are like, we don't want to be outside of compliance, but I mean, there's no path that's been public that is okay. And if I go to the SEC, am I going to get approval? Like, we still don't have ETFs approved. We still, like, almost everything crypto related does not get approved. Mm-hmm. So like there's no meaningful path for people to come into compliance if this is the new way. Anyways, for people that haven't been paying attention, or if you're new and crypto curious, that's kind of the deal with Coinbase. Tron TRX, they're saying that it was sold as an unregistered security. I mean, the arguments, again, if they're using the Howey test, are still somewhat opaque. It's not as direct as stock would be or general equity. But when you couple a registered or an unregistered security with market manipulation, with allegations of fraud and all of these other things, yeah, that's kind of where they're going. Justin Sun, again, has been a great advocate of the space in many ways, but also, has no filter, generally speaking, when it comes to public appearances and so on. And in some cases,
we've got Coinbase, we've got Tron, and for anyone who doesn't know, Justin Sun also would have been your savior with BitTorrent, that kind of thing. And then we have Ripple. Ripple's the other big case. What's Ripple doing?
Yeah, so similar situation. Ripple, they figure that Ripple sold unregistered securities when they did their initial sale once upon a time. Again, I'm pretty confident actually that Ripple has a pretty good defense here, and so obviously does Ripple if they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars fighting this. But effectively, it's a similar thing. They sold a security that, for whatever reason, and I don't know all the ins and outs of the case. I haven't read any of the documents, but effectively TLDR is there's suspicion, at least on behalf of the regulators, that they were making promises of future upside and, that the value of the token being connected to.
Okay, do any of these differ from Kraken? Just counting off all the ones on my hands.
Yeah. So Kraken was pretty similar. They just stopped staking in the U.S.
Mhm.
So again, if you have a tin hat on, which I don't yet, but I could eventually.
I'll mail you one. It's okay.
But if you had a tin hat on, this would seem like just another thing that's trying to kind of snuff out the flame of an emerging technology. You know, create challenges for fiat on and off ramps. You know, create banking challenges for many of the businesses that are serving the space. Make it more and more difficult for people to participate and for institutions to, you know, offer new and innovative products in the United States. It's not going to stop it. All it does is mean that the US people just don't have access to the same technologies and opportunities that everybody else has. And they would potentially argue that that's because they're trying to protect the consumers and the global consumers are at a greater risk. I just don't think that's what it is at this point. Protecting the consumers is like, we could easily come up with a framework that protects consumers. Like,
well, that's why this is FUD, right? So they have big news about scams, like things that fall apart, like FTX, you know, dirty swans, as JD likes to call them. So we have that. We blow that up in the news. We create all the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and then we say we're solving it by having this aggressive stance. When what we're actually doing is creating more fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and hemorrhaging innovation, right?
It's like, it's so short-sighted. Like, I don't understand. And again, I'm trying to give credit to regulators. They're under immense pressure from constituents, from, you know, their committees in Congress and all this. Like, I get it. Like, everybody's in between a rock and a hard place here. And so they're trying to figure it out. Business is trying to figure it out. But all I can say is, like, let's fucking cut the shit, put our heads together, and try to find a meaningful, positive path forward. And so hopefully that happens.
I've got to outline why we're saying FU to the SEC today, because there's been a lot. We've talked about a lot here in the last 20 minutes. But on two hands, we have Coinbase, Kraken, Lido, Tron, Sushi Swap. Who am I missing? There's like 10, right? Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, Jake Paul, Lindsay Lohan, Kardashians, like
Ripple.
Like there's so much.
Last week I counted, I think there's 11 individual new cases with the SEC. And you know, it's a little bit grandma of me, but you catch more flies with honey, right? We're not going to have people happy to cooperate and have those good faith conversations with the SEC if they continue to leverage and attack. Whereas if they are able to lay out something that is clear for people to try and draft and attempt regulation in that way, people will be much more likely to comply instead of, you know, taking the challenge and moving to the Russia-China hub, or moving to the EU hub, or even moving to a South American crypto hub. So FUSEC for hurting North America's potential to participate in this emerging technology.
Yeah, without a doubt. Fuck you. Yeah. Honestly. Anyways, okay. Let's end it on a bit of a lighter note. Blockworks. Let's hear it. I know you love this one, so you can set it up.
I just think it's so funny that Sin Futures has launched an NFT trading app where you can swipe left and right on your NFTs, allowing up to 3 times leverage, so you can short on one side and long on the other side. Okay, so with Tinder, there's been a lot of discussion about how it's commoditizing relationships and love and people, and how it's really bad for our brains, because if you are constantly being thrown these people and these what have you, is we start to be desensitized to them, we start to dehumanize people, and we start to commoditize love. And so in a world where we're not sure, where we're trying to like make a case that NFTs are not just art commodities, it seems very painful to me that we are now commoditizing them on a Tinder-like app. But also, it's just hilarious that people are going to lay in bed awake at night swiping. Like, that's what every crypto conference is going to be.
It's people just swiping their leverage. You know, we know the Sin Futures guys really well. We're actually investors in Sin Futures. I'm doing an AMA with them.
I didn't know that.
Next Thursday or something.
Yeah, that's right.
9 a.m. Eastern, I think. Anyways, or 11. I don't know. Anyways, I'm doing an AMA with them, and you know, big fans of what they're doing. They've really built a novel futures platform for how to create leverage and perps and different things, and it's really quite fantastic. They've got a lot of users on a lot of blockchains. They've been around for a while. They have big backers. What I like about this, although it's kind of funny that it's kind of like Tinder-esque, is that it's nice to see someone taking a new approach to a fairly stuffy problem. Like buying futures isn't super sexy and fun generally. And so what they're trying to do is gear their platform as much towards, obviously your institutions most likely aren't going to be swiping leverage on a mobile app.
Have you ever been to a finance liquid lunch? They are absolutely going to be sitting at that lunch table going broop, broop.
As individuals, but not for their institutional accounts. But I think it's a good way to it's a good way to differentiate. And I haven't seen the app. When we talked about the story, I thought that's kind of hilarious. But again, simple is really in many cases the answer. And I think with tech, often we spend so much time, complicating the hell out of things, when in fact something simple is often what wins. You look at Robinhood, the proliferation of Robinhood for retail. I mean, Robinhood is so simple that you can do all the things in Robinhood with barely any insight and barely any knowledge of how to use the app. It's just so simple and user friendly. Similar to why Apple became such a big thing. So
that's actually why I love this, is it's so approachable. We talk a lot about the technology chasm and how are we going to get average people to enter the world of decentralized blockchain and what's that going to look like? Yeah, make it look like Tinder. Everyone knows how to use it. It'll be fun. It'll be gamified. There's almost no barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
It's just a great idea. It's a great way to get people involved.
I surely won't be doing it, only because I often pocket dial and send random text messages to people. Could you imagine accidentally putting leverage on something in the wrong and not knowing, and then you come back and your account's wiped out or something?
I'm sure it'd be way more successful for me than my current financial approach. So,
hey, I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it scales. Anyways, shout out to Sin Futures. Again, normally I don't have a horse in the race. In this case, I do. We are investors in Sin Futures, so just saying that for transparency. But it's pretty cool. We'll see how it. I still think it's hilarious. It's cool, but it's kind of hilarious. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. Anyways,
happy FU Friday.
FU Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. We're gonna end on the FU SEC. Maybe we'll make a little song or a jingle or something. Yeah. Do you know what we didn't do today?
What?
I don't think we did the stinger
shit.
What we're talking about.
No, that's on me.
It's on you, yeah, because you're
it's totally on me. I take full responsibility.
And I take no responsibility for most things.
As it should be.
Yeah. So anyways, everybody, have a great weekend. Try not to be concerned about all of these crazy things over the weekend. Spend some time with your family. As always, touch grass.
Touch some grass. Tweet at Lindsay Lohan. Let her know she's still loved.
Yeah. I don't know about that recommendation, but touch some grass, spend some time with your fam, and we've got you covered. Because
we'll catch you on Monday.
Yeah, all we do is watch the news, watch the FUD. We'll let you know if the world's crashing on Monday. In the meantime, subscribe, hit the bell, smash the shit, whatever, share, send to your friends. I don't know, comment, give us feedback, fact check us,
send us merch. Crazy.
Send us merch. Again, shout out Moonwell. Thanks, guys. Talk to you all on Monday. Go FUD yourself, Kiara, 12:30 Eastern.